Just a quick note before we get mixing. The original creator of this recipe is Tove Jensen, and she's Tove Jensen Ceramics if you want to check her out on Instagram. We'll be using a modified version of that recipe, but I just wanted to go ahead and give that original creator the credit. It's definitely an awesome recipe, so thank you very much. Hey everyone, Sarah here at Three Little Potters. A bit of a different view today. I am just getting ready to mix a glaze, and I thought I would bring you along with me and sort of go over that process again for anyone who's thinking about taking the leap and starting to mix your own glazes. The recipe I'm going to be mixing today is Tove. There's a quick little preview, and I'll leave the link to the recipe on Glazy down below in the description if you want to check it out and print out your own. So real quick before we get going on mixing, you're going to want to have a scientific scale. And this is different than a shipping scale. This is something that apparently just registers 0.06 grams out of nowhere. The wind shifted. Yeah, it's not going to be the same as a shipping scale. You're going to have to invest in a really good scale. I think I paid something like $100 for this one. The $10 ones are just not going to be as accurate as you need for glazing. You're also going to want a mask. There's lots of different ones. This one's pretty good. And you will also need a sieve, depending on where you are in your pronunciation. These are the two that I use. Yes, I am aware that this is only a 60, and ideally it would be an 80 or maybe a 120. But the 60 was all they had. And, you know, I just haven't had any problems with it, so I haven't replaced them. And they have lasted me a very long time. And while it's true that you could rig something up with your own screen and your own sort of cutout plastic bucket, I would recommend just go ahead and buy the one that's for that purpose, because they last really well, they don't rust, and it's just going to save you time overall. So I wouldn't DIY that particular item. I would just go ahead and invest in it. So before we get into mixing, I just like to say that, you know, I think there's this sort of idea that mixing pottery glazes is more of this like elite, complicated thing that you do when you're a very experienced potter, and it has to be, ooh, very complicated, slightly dangerous. What is it? It's not. It's not. It's, if you've ever made a recipe, if you've cooked from scratch, you can make a glaze recipe. You just wear a mask while you're doing it. And we all got plenty of experience with that during the pandemic. So it's not as scary and big as anybody thinks, you know? I mean, I'm like, what, 10, 11 o'clock at night here, and I'm like, oh, I wish I had another green glaze. And, you know, if you're mixing and you have the ingredients, it's just like the same as being like, you know, a fresh cookie would really be good right now. And instead, I'm just going to mix up a green glaze really quick, and it's going to be awesome, and it'll be ready to go. You know, so don't be scared. You know, I had somebody else being like, "Oh, what if I substitute this or that, or what's going to happen?" Now, these are all melty ingredients, right? You know, one of the ways that you learn about glazes is you could take an individual ingredient, put it in, you know, a bisque throwaway dish, and melt it at your glaze temperature to see how it behaves, right? See what it does by itself. Kind of gives you an idea about the things that you're combining together. So it's not like, I don't know, it's not like you left the baking soda out and now the glaze isn't going to rise or something. You know what I mean? It's these are melty items. You're combining melty items. You're putting them on your pot. It's going to be okay. You know, you do want to measure accurately, you know, and it's kind of a fun thing to do. And, you know, it's like trying new recipes is fun, trying new glazes is fun, and it's nice to have the immediacy of it. You know, the downside is that it does take time, right? And it's whether or not you want to devote some of that time and space to keep these ingredients in a room. But I would also argue that it's worth doing, at least to some extent. I mean, you've seen me, obviously. I've got a whole pile of commercial glazes too, right? And then I've got a whole pile of glazes that I mix. You can do both. It's not like you're giving up on your beautiful commercial glazes, you know. Sometimes you're just supplementing a little. Like sometimes you don't want to wait for shipping. Sometimes you want the cheap option because, you know, it's just a liner glaze. It's going in the inside of the cup. You just want white. And the other thing you need to get used to when you're making your own glazes is testing. I know we're all like used to looking at like, oh, I looked on the, you know, Facebook forum for the Emiko glaze group and I saw this combination and this is what I'm going to expect. It's not like that so much when you're doing your own glazes, right? It requires some bit of testing. And sometimes, you know, oh, the ground up stone that I usually put in this recipe is all of a sudden the mine's closed down and I need to put a different kind of ground up stone in it. And yeah, it needs more testing. Sometimes you're like, oh, test tile. But you know, it's I think ceramics is just one of those things that just it requires that level of testing to get better, to grow, to develop new products. So yeah, it takes time. It would be nice if we could just ask somebody and see what the recipe looked like and know if it was worth mixing. But here I am. I'm going to mix this recipe, test it for you, and then you can see my results and you'll know if this is a recipe that you want to mix yourself. So I'm looking at the recipe. Not too hard, right? Okay, so we've got a feldspar, some zinc, silica, whiting. Super simple recipe, some copper carb, some rutile. I am going to go ahead and add some bentonite to this recipe because I did look through the reviews and I saw somebody else was talking about it settling, hard panning, that sort of thing. So bentonite is like just a little something here. I have a bag of it right here. Just a little something extra, and it's not really going to change your recipe. What it's going to do is kind of help keep your glaze in suspension. This is the container I'm going to mix in. This is just from Home Depot. I'm going to go ahead and tar out the empty container. And these are some of the ingredients I'm using. And the recipe calls for rutile. Light rutile is better than dark rutile, but dark rutile is cheaper, and it looks like I was being cheap that day, and that is all I have. So you can see the amounts that I bought these in because that might be helpful. So I bought 2 pounds of dark rutile. I would usually buy 1 pound of light rutile. This was a 10-pound bag of whiting. Copper carbonate. I usually buy that in 2 pounds, but I think they gave it to me in 2 pre-measured 1-pound bags. Bentonite, just a couple pounds of that will last you forever. Zinc oxide, this was originally a 5-pound bag. Some of the other ingredients in this recipe would be Custer feldspar, and I store my dry chemicals in larger bags in these charcoal briquette storage containers. You can also find these usually for dog food storage. So I do love that they have that seal on them, and they also have wheels, so they're easy to move in and out. So I have Custer feldspar, my silica's down here. I don't know why I bought a 50-pound bag of walsenite. I'm never going to get rid of that. But on the upside, I do have a lot of Gursely borate, and I know that one's changed and isn't around as much anymore. So when I'm mixing, I will always start at the bottom of the recipe and work to the top. That's just the way I do it. You may want to do it differently. The reason why I do that the most is that these ingredients that require the smallest amount, usually your colorants, are going to make the biggest difference. So if this was cobalt, you would want to be very, very accurate with how much you're putting into the recipe. So if I put it in first and I mess up, then I can scoop a little bit of it back out, and then it'll be all fine. Okay, so for this recipe, I am making a 1,200 gram batch, which fits pretty well in this 2.5 quart container from Home Depot. And we are starting out with 21 grams of copper carbonate. Gonna be close. Too much. And that's why we're starting with the smaller amount first. Okay. We could get very, very close if we wanted to. All right. close enough. So before I forget, I'm going to put in the bentonite since that is not in our recipe. This is going to require a little bit of math on our part. Okay, so if we're making a 1200 gram recipe and we wanted to add 1 gram of bentonite, then it would be 1 gram per 100 grams, and that would be 12 grams total. I should probably not put my cobalt. Let's wipe that off. Cobalt, copper, sorry. Okay, so we've tarred it out. We just want 12. If we go over, it's not a big deal because this is just keeping it in suspension. So ideally I want somewhere between 12 and 22. So I don't know if I should do 2. Maybe I should do 2. Probably should do 2. So if it was 2, then it would be 24 grams. All right. The crystalline glaze, so it probably does need more like 24. Pretty good. Now you can see that I'm not being super picky about the bentonite because it's not going to really affect the recipe very much at all. All right, rutile. So you can see I'm kind of like, you could do these all individually in a different container and then add them. I like to live a little bit dangerously. So I just kind of put them in different sections of the same container. And I wasn't paying very much attention on that last one. Ooh, dead on that one. All right, whiting. This is like ground up chalk. Whiting is deceptively heavy, so you got to watch that one. We do need 170 grams of it though, so I need a bigger scoop for this one. Hold on, we're gonna get a bigger scoop. Oh, I almost just put this wet cup in there. All right, I'm looking for a drying thing. Hmm. I've got that sealed up for a minute so that we can discuss. So the next step, I'm going to add water to what we just mixed, which is in here, sealed up. So I did 1,200-gram dry recipe, so I'm going to add 80% in water to that. What does that equal? Sorry, math was leaving my brain for a minute there. So if it was 1,000 grams, 80% would be 800 grams water, but we're doing 1,200, so oh, it's painful. 960 grams. So I am going to go put 960 grams of water in this, and I will bring you with me, but I'm going to be quiet because when you're putting the water in this, it still off gases quite a bit. So you do want to keep your mask on for that part and when you're first hitting it with the immersion blender. So, all right, so we're going to go 960. Pretty hard to read in this, but it's almost to the top. Container could be slightly cleaner. All right, since I only made I guess I can't. Since I already only made a small batch of this glaze, I'm just gonna do it into this container here and then pour it back into that container rather than get out the big sieve. Now, keep in mind when you're doing this that you're not actually trying to get rid of any material. You're just trying to break up any big chunks or any parts that didn't dissolve all the way. This measuring cup was just a teeny bit bigger. Just a teeny bit. It's okay. So you can see here, there's a little piece I missed. It's probably bentonite. So see these chunks on the edge? I'll try to kind of get those off. Scoop them back in here so that it can kind of go through. And if I had my spray bottle with water, I would spritz a little bit on this wire screen to kind of clean it even more so that I'm getting even more of this through, but that is okay. I'm going to go to the underside, scrape that back in. Now I'm going to use the same container here. all ready to go. Consistency looks pretty good. I'm probably going to leave it just like it is right now. And I'm going to dip in a few pieces and we will see what they come out of the kiln looking like. This little dish has been waxed on the bottom. I am also going to test it on, I believe this is Rue stoneware. No, I'm sorry, this is Iceman. Too many clays hanging around. That's Iceman, and this is Brown Bear. And then this is Rue stoneware. And what I'm going to do here is I think I'm going to, I don't think I want the whole cup. So I'm going to do the inside. And then I'm going to dip to down here. You know, I think I might, I'm considering doing another dip on this one. All right, quick one. And there, those will be all done. So just as something to consider, you saw how quickly I was able to dip those pieces. Yes, we spent a lot of time mixing that glaze, but in the end, we didn't spend the time brushing on many coats of glaze, so it kind of evens out a little bit there. Okay, our results are out of the kiln and everything looks great. So this is the Rue stoneware, and I think I'll put these on the photo board so that you can see a little bit better. There it is over B-Mix, and you can see those little crystals in the middle that we were talking about. And as a comparison, here it is over the Brown Bear clay. Oh, I see one little mark right there where it didn't quite heal over. And this is it on the B-Mix cup. So yeah, great results. It looks like our specific gravity was correct and everything was great. And here these are a little bit more close up so that you can see the crystals. So these are definitely very flat crystals that don't interrupt the glazed surface, so that makes it a little bit more stable. That one does have a couple pinholes on the Brown Bear. I definitely prefer it over the B-Mix rather than the Brown Bear. And here it is on the Rue. It looks like it's behaving pretty well on the Rue. I think the speckles of the Rue almost interrupt the crystals of the glaze, so I do prefer it on the plain white clay body. I do have a little mix there. Very smooth though. I hope you enjoyed watching me mix this glaze. I hope it kind of inspires you to maybe make the leap and try mixing a glaze. It's maybe a new start to the new year. Try something new. You know, it's definitely, it's the immediacy of mixing your own glaze is definitely very nice, as well as the cost savings. So I'd love it if you liked and subscribed. Thanks for watching. I hope to do more videos reviewing mixed glazes that you can mix yourself off Glazy this year. So thanks. Have a good day.